Secrecy is the foundation of the world's oldest power. For decades, the monarchy guarded its silence until now. A black swan has arrived, a sealed genetic map that shatters history. This isn't a public announcement. It is the precise moment absolute certainty collapses. Princess Anne, the stoic temple guardian, finally cracked. Her rare tears weren't just emotion, they signaled a belief system colliding with an irreversible truth. Before we decode this historic shift, subscribe now. This wasn't a tabloid rumor. The leak bled from the very heart of the royal machine. A flawless system suddenly went dark. Calls were cut. Oak doors slammed. The air at Buckingham Palace wasn't filled with ceremony, but with the suffocating weight of a succession crisis. Everyone in that room knew the stakes. They weren't just facing a document, but the rewriting of history. Reputation can be salvaged, but when science questions the bloodline, there is no retreat. The moment the report touched Anne's hands, the order shattered. Witnesses called it a total collapse of discipline. Her trembling wasn't just nerves, it was the armor cracking. Why would a veteran of political storms unravel over a lab result? Because this wasn't just data, it was the key to a buried secret validating a dark warning whispered decades ago by Diana herself. Was this fate? Or the final move in a game we were never meant to understand? Diana's letters hid more than pain. They encoded an identity paradox, a flaw in the royal design itself. Anne once dismissed these warnings as paranoia. Now she realizes Diana wasn't venting, she was predicting the future. Whispers are easy to ignore. DNA is not. The physical evidence shattered Anne's composure. Normally, the system neutralizes threats before they surface, but this time the gears jammed. Total paralysis took over. They aren't staying silent out of caution. They are silent because the system has failed. When DNA rewrites history, the rule book burns. Inside the palace, the fear wasn't about managing the media, it was about the collapse of a centuries-old foundation. To understand this panic, we must uncover a secret 1990s pact. Diana the rebel and Anne the guardian, two opposites who should have clashed yet found a dangerous common ground in the shadows. It wasn't politics, it was shared survival. They both saw the hidden fractures in the crown. When the masks dropped, they faced the cold calculation of their reality together. In that silence, a warning was planted, one that became Anne's ghost. Diana wasn't just mourning a broken marriage. She was targeting the bloodline itself, exposing a flaw in a system the world thought was untouchable. That dormant warning has awoken as hard evidence. We are past the point of discovery. Now comes the fallout. If a genetic map can erase a legacy, which side do you choose, the cold facts or the ancient order type 2 for truth? Type 5 for stability. Don't just watch, decide. Like and subscribe now because the next mystery is even darker. Diana didn't name names. She left a system warning. This wasn't fear, it was a calculated fail-safe. She rigged the timeline to ensure the truth would eventually surface. From that moment, her bond with Anne became a strategic pact. Through coded notes, they mapped out loops for the next generation's secrets, far too explosive for the monarchy to handle at the time. If the unexpected strikes, you must guard the final data. Diana's whisper wasn't a confession, it was a transfer of command. Anne accepted it as a dark theory only for history to turn it into a crushing, silent burden. Decades passed, but when the cold science of the genetic map surfaced, the truth hit Anne hard. Diana's warnings weren't riddles, they were precise predictions. The ghost has hardened into molecular proof, ready to dismantle the crown's foundation. Even Anne couldn't predict an external variable breaking the royal seal, An unnamed entity ensured this code escaped the dark archives. And the scariest part, this sample didn't come from a doctor's office. It wasn't routine. It was taken. Sources confirm this was Diana's self-preservation algorithm. In her final isolated years, she wasn't seeking medical answers, she was planting proof of identity. Now history collides with science. Marble walls can no longer block genetic truth. Is this a random glitch in the legacy, or is it the inevitable shock the system needs to finally evolve? If you held the key to topple the world's oldest power, what would you choose: eternal silence to keep the peace, or the dangerous road of truth, tell us truth or order? Diana knew she couldn't trust the system. She built a shadow network, a private circle of experts untouchable by the institution. Among them, one specialist crossed the professional line to become a silent witness to history. He saw past the pageantry. He knew the royal machine didn't just preserve history, it rewrote it to ensure survival. Under his watch, a silent biological protocol was executed. This wasn't rebellion, it was information insurance. The sample was vaulted off the grid far beyond the palace's reach, Diana's final defense against a system she could no longer trust. When Paris shattered, the world chaos took over. But Diana's insurance policy didn't trigger instantly, it went underground. The specialist tracked down Anne with a brutal message: the science contradicts the lie. Torn between her vow and the crown's survival, Anne made her choice. She didn't act, she buried it. Anne didn't destroy the data. She buried it. Encrypted in the deepest archive layers, it had no digital footprint, a ghost waiting for its cue. After 20 years of silence, the hidden variable woke up. A source from Diana's inner circle triggered the alarm. They didn't need to leak the full file. They just proved the weapon existed, the protocol, the specialist, and the signatures. That was enough. The hypothesis is dead. We are witnessing an irreversible chain reaction. The data exposes unexplainable anomalies in the very heart of the succession. These aren't random biological glitches. They are cracks in the bloodline. The immutable right to rule is finally being questioned. Science has breached the fortress of tradition, and the crisis is absolute. If a single genetic code can topple a kingdom, do we cleanse the system with truth or bury it to save the symbol? Secrets have moved from marble tombs to digital encryption. But when that code breaks, the choice is ours. In a transparent world, do we need necessary lies to protect history, or is truth the only legacy worth fighting for? Drop your analysis below, and follow us as we continue to decode the world's most complex systems. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The upper echelons of power didn't just shake, they cracked. Questions of legitimacy are no longer theories, they are weapons rewriting the equation of authority. Every sacred inheritance law is now on trial. The system scrambled to contain the damage and spin the story, but they failed. The leak unleashed a new, unstoppable, sovereign scientific truth. DNA speaks a language no diplomat can silence. The real shock wasn't the data, it was the breakdown. Princess Anne, the axis of discipline, finally shattered. Witnessing the monarchy's strongest pillar tremble behind closed doors proved one thing. This wasn't a political crisis. It was the death of a belief system. The truth didn't break on the news. It broke in the dim silence of her study. This was profoundly personal. Anne wasn't facing a scandal, she was staring at the historical paradox she had spent decades burying. Witnesses described total paralysis. She froze. She refused to speak to Charles or the heirs. That silence was the sound of the family structure snapping. She refused the summary. She demanded the raw evidence. But when her eyes hit the genetic code, the weight was unbearable even for her. Her tears weren't shock, they were recognition. Deep down, she had always felt the aftershock of Diana's warning. What the world called paranoia was now cold, hard science. The prophecy didn't just come true, it arrived with enough force to derail the entire monarchy. When she finally broke her silence to a single confidant, it wasn't just emotion, it was a confession of systemic failure. Her words cut deep. I swore I would protect her, and I failed. This isn't just grief, it's an admission that protocols and loyalty were powerless to save the truth. Anne didn't crack under media pressure. She cracked under the moral weight of realizing that her own silence was the wall blocking justice all along. The delay wasn't caution, it was a fatal error. By keeping the data locked, she let the machine crush the truth. Anne's tears aren't just grief, they represent the weight of her own inaction. But beneath the regret lies a terrifying realization. Her words, "The crown will never recover," aren't emotional hyperbole. They are a cold, hard diagnosis. When DNA disproves the bloodline, the throne loses its anchor. A lie this deep creates a permanent security flaw, one that can never be patched. For decades, the royal machine suppressed these shadows with ritual and protocol. But the genetic variable has ripped the veil away. We are done with whispers. This is the brutal collision of history and hard science. Genetic data does more than expose secrets. It reconstructs the truth. For the powerful, this isn't a media crisis. It is the demolition of the old order. The inquiry into loyalty and science ends here. Marble walls can no longer block the genetic code. A new chapter of history is being written right now in a language that is more objective and colder than ever before. Here is the final question. In a world where science strips secrets bare, can we handle a truth that shatters our reality? Or do we need myths to survive? If you held this report, would you choose disclosure to change the world or suppression to keep the peace? The data is now in the light. A seismic genetic misalignment has been found in the chain of succession. The map of power is about to be redrawn. When power is built on unbroken blood, a single deviation brings the whole structure down. If the genes don't match, the titles are void. This isn't just a legal issue, it is a crisis of institutional authenticity. Inheritance laws, royal decrees, and public trust are all suddenly suspect, and the deeper analysis reveals the terrifying truth. This was not a random accident. Diana didn't act on impulse, she acted on intelligence. Her security was compromised, her calls intercepted. To survive, she built a truth bunker outside the system, a final defense against a history she knew would be rewritten. But her trust had limits. Even Anne, the chosen guardian, was only given half the key. The name of the root variable remains in shadow. Only the warning of its destructive potential for the House of Windsor has endured through time. As these genetic fragments began to erupt into public discourse, this was no longer merely a media scandal. It was a direct assault on the structure of succession itself. Within the corridors of power, chaos spread as strategic advisors confronted a problem with no easy solution. If a single link in the direct line of succession is called into question regarding legitimacy, the entire legal framework that has governed the system thus far enters a state of temporary invalidation. This does not affect only the individuals directly involved. It raises a profound question about the future of the entire institution. Will the system choose purification to preserve the integrity of historical data, or will it attempt to shroud the issue beneath a new layer of diplomatic fog? As foundations once thought immovable begin to tremble under the pressure of empirical truth, the monarchy faces an existential crisis. This is not merely the story of an individual, it is the fracture of a belief system that has endured for centuries. If a single link in the chain of succession is proven to have a genetic misalignment, the entire legal structure and inheritance rules enter a state of invalidation. Silence from the firm is no longer a prudent strategy. It is becoming a catalyst for speculation about systematic deception. As parliamentary corridors begin to whisper about constitutional repercussions, public trust fractures between empathy and sharp scrutiny. While Anne sinks into a collapse of systemic certainty, another figure has emerged from the shadows with a radically different approach. Queen Camilla, in an emergency meeting behind closed doors, did not choose denial or grief. Instead, she displayed a state of strategic resistance. From her perspective, the genetic data was not a truth to be honored, but an information weapon sent from the past. Her remark about the recklessness of the deceased revealed an uncompromising confrontation between two modes of thought. On one side, Anne, with her anguish over an abandoned truth. On the other, Camilla, determined to protect the existing structure at any cost. The tension between the two most powerful figures within the palace erupted into a genuine battle of methodology. One side represented disillusionment and guilt, the other embodied a calculated damage control strategy. Camilla demanded a tight-lipped response, deploying legal instruments and media pressure to smother the leak. The marble walls now enclosed not only ritual, but a battlefield of legal threats and narrative manipulation. The system was attempting to heal itself by isolating the information pathogen. But can a genetic fracture truly be patched over with administrative paperwork? We have witnessed the moment when science, emotion, and power collide head-on. The final secret encoded in blood has not merely altered a lineage, it is raising a generational question about the very survival of institutions founded on heredity. Behind declarations about preserving stability, a strategy of system repositioning is being quietly deployed. The objective is not simply to contain a scandal, but to carry out a permanent data purification aimed at links deemed incompatible with the officially sanctioned bloodline. A leak from the highest advisory levels revealed a pragmatism bordering on cruelty. It is time to stop sustaining hypotheses that are not real. This was not merely a personal remark, it was a signal of an effort to rewrite royal history. According to internal analyses, the public relations apparatus received a top-secret directive recast the genetic data as a product of imagination or part of recycled conspiracy narratives in order to preserve the coherence of the royal storyline. Yet this structure encountered an immovable force: the steadfast resolve of Princess Anne. In a moment described as the breaking point of internal diplomacy, she delivered a sharp declaration. This is not a narrative to be managed. This is the truth. Anne's departure from the meeting, punctuated by the slam of a closing door, marked the end of compromise protocols. For the guardian of tradition, the line between protecting the crown and betraying the truth had officially been crossed. At that moment, the system ceased to be a unified whole and fractured into factions with completely opposing value systems. As internal conflicts reached their peak, the palace's self-defense mechanism completely failed under external pressure. Whispers in the shadows rapidly transformed into blazing headlines across global media. This was the scenario. The firm feared most the truth was no longer within their control. As genetic maps were dissected by data analysts and the press alike, a wall of protection built over centuries collapsed in a matter of hours. Headlines about the Windsor bloodline and the DNA variable sent shockwaves across every digital platform. Now the story is no longer guided by royal statements, but by the relentless scrutiny of a global public. The question of bloodline legitimacy is no longer an internal matter. It has become an open investigation for all humanity. Every expert, every biographer, and every observer is constructing their own interpretation from the fragments of leaked data. The palace's silence is no longer a display of authority, it is a sign of paralysis in the face of an undeniable reality. We are witnessing a rare historical moment when genetic secrets become powerful enough to pierce the most fortified layers of a monarchy. This conflict is not merely between individuals, but between the value of truth and the duty to preserve the institution. Now we invite you to exercise your own analytical judgment. Can the crown survive in an era of absolute transparency, or are we witnessing the unraveling of a long-standing myth? Leave your perspective below, and don't forget to subscribe to follow the next developments in this explosive investigation. When the walls of silence were breached, the outside world applied immense pressure. Questions about the coherence of the succession system and bloodline variables were no longer confined to closed rooms. Media outlets began running algorithmic deep dives into the past, turning historical ghosts into direct weapons against present-day credibility. Amid this data storm, Princess Anne unexpectedly became the focal point of a generational debate. One side views her as a guardian of truth, while the other sees her as a link that allowed a system error to persist for far too long. In an era where subtlety has been replaced by the speed of dissemination, Anne has become the focal point of a structure in fracture. The true detonation of this chain of events originated from an unreleased root data source, a leaked portion of Diana's private diary. These were not merely pages of writing, they constituted a truth matrix recorded during her final months. References to a bloodline secret provided the public with the final pieces needed to complete the timeline and understand the motivations behind the unfolding events. When these data points were finally linked together, the palace's conventional diplomatic protocols became useless. Internal pressure reached an alarming level as figures within the system began to panic in search of an exit. Under advisors' pressure to issue an information patch, a denial statement, Anne made a shocking choice to end the cover-up. Her assertion, "There will be no more data distortion," transformed the monarchy's long-standing silence into a devastating blow to its very structure. At this point, the illusion of a fully unified system completely shattered. Constitutional experts were summoned daily to address variables threatening the survival of the crown. Inside, there was chaos born of contradictory decisions. Outside, an uncompromising demand for transparency. Anne stood at the eye of the storm where every pressure and every old promise collided at full force. Yet this was still not the end. In a move that overturned every rule of royal governance, Princess Anne took a step that no strategist had anticipated. She appeared before the cameras not as a symbol of power shielded by ritual, but as an individual confronting the truth. It was a shift from royal protocol to responsibility to truth, a final act of facing a reality that no marble wall could conceal any longer. The moment Anne stepped into view will be remembered as a fracture point in traditional history. There were no blaring trumpets, no ceremonial escort of courtiers, only a solitary figure fully shedding the mantle of the steadfast temple guardian. In her hands was not a censored administrative document, but a relic of truth, a crumpled letter from Diana, one that had haunted the system like a ghost for more than 2 decades. As the cameras captured the image, Anne began to speak. Her voice was not that of an institution, but of a human being tormented by prolonged silence. She did not begin with justification. She began by confronting the variables head-on. With a painful steadiness, Anne confirmed what the system had long sought to conceal. The genetic report was an objective reality. She admitted that fragments of truth had been entrusted to her by Diana in her final days, but that at the time she chose to prioritize structural stability over data transparency. Her confession carried the weight of a belated awakening. I mistakenly believed that burying a variable would protect the integrity of the entire architecture. But truth has no expiration date. It merely waits for the moment to reclaim its right to exist. In that instant, millions of watching hearts felt the shattering of a royal illusion, giving way to a stark, unadorned reality. The climax of Anne's address came when she broke every convention of lineage to reach the core of humanity itself. Looking straight into the camera, she delivered a direct message to the central figure of the storm, offering a new definition, one that drew a clear and deliberate line between a genetic map and an emotional legacy. She affirmed blood may define a line of succession, but empathy and love are what define a family. This act was not merely a gesture of consolation, it was a restructuring of values at the very heart of a system historically built solely on bloodline. Its impact was immediate, sending shockwaves across the globe, not through outrage, but through an unprecedented depth of empathy. That moment resonated far beyond the boundaries of an ordinary speech, becoming a seismic shift in how legacy itself was understood. For the first time in the modern era, the public was no longer observing a symbolic entity. They were confronting an act of existential authenticity. Anne chose to break through traditional barriers in favor of a universal truth. The wave of response was not merely support, but a redefinition of admiration itself. From the most exacting critics to the general public, all recognized this as the most powerful moment of humanization in the long history of monarchy. Anne had shifted the narrative, entirely transforming a data crisis, a DNA scandal, into a revolution of sincerity. Before leaving the podium, Anne left behind a principle that will be quoted for centuries to come, a manifesto on the balance between power and truth. Truth may generate tremors that shake the crown, but it is the very adhesive that strengthens the foundation of a nation. The silence that followed was not emptiness, but the sound of a system standing at a strategic breaking point, a state in which old rules no longer apply, and every path forward demands an unavoidable reckoning. A family was changed forever, not by external pressure, but by internal courage. Yet as Anne stepped down, a new chapter opened with the most critical variable of all, King Charles III. Facing an institution in flux and mounting questions about the coherence of the bloodline, the monarch now confronts a decision that will define his reign. Will he choose to continue the conservative protocols of the firm, or will he follow the path of transparency his sister has opened? This is not merely a personal choice. It is a question of whether a 1,000-year-old legacy can survive in the information age. The greatest question now no longer lies in genetic numbers, but in the response of the apex of power. Will the monarch choose to deny objective reality or accept the historical reckoning that Diana set in motion decades ago? Behind stone walls, the silence surrounding King Charles has become a terrifying pause. The cancellation of public engagements and the postponement of ceremonies are not merely personal retreats. They signal a paralysis of the entire representative machinery. Behind closed doors, a governance tragedy is unfolding. Charles is being torn between two opposing forces, the pragmatic faction led by Queen Camilla and a circle of seasoned advisors urging an immediate campaign of legal damage control to erect a barrier between the crown and the consequences of the DNA variable. And the legacy faction echoes from the past and the sincerity of Anne's confession, where the ghost of Diana is no longer merely a memory, but has become a shaping coefficient for the future of the reign. Charles is not merely confronting a personal crisis. He stands at the threshold of what can be called the entropy of the institution, a state in which old rules no longer possess the strength to hold a fracturing structure together. A shift in power has begun to surface through secret meetings with Prince William. Held late at night and entirely removed from advisory staff, these discussions carry the character of future reconstruction. According to system-level analyses, these are no longer ordinary father-son conversations. These were dramatic, contradictory, and at times explosive debates over how to maintain the crown when its very foundation has shifted. They are attempting to design a new protocol for an era in which truth can no longer be permanently sealed away. King Charles now stands before an entirely new map of reality. Every step he takes from here will determine whether the monarchy adapts in order to survive or collapses under the weight of secrets brought into the open. In your view, in the confrontation between institutional stability and the transparency of truth, which side will ultimately prevail? This content is purely for reference based on unverified hypotheses and public speculation. We approach it from an objective, analytical perspective. Join me in decoding this mysterious picture together. Press 1 if you want to continue digging into unexplored and undisclosed angles. Press 0 if you believe in the absolute self-protective mechanisms of the royal institution. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next shocking developments in the series Truth Behind the Veil. Thank you for accompanying us. See you at the next variable. January 2026. The London sky does not bear the gray hue of its customary rains. Instead, it hangs heavy with an invisible pressure converging on the Supreme Court. In courtroom number 7, the air is thick with suspicion. This is no longer a story about glossy documentaries or controversial television interviews. We are standing at a historical crossroads where notions of privacy, loyalty, and the legitimacy of one of the world's oldest royal lineages are being placed under the microscope of the law. In a silence so complete that even hurried breaths could be heard, the appearance of a veteran figure in investigative journalism completely altered the balance. He is often described as an architect of hard truths, a man who never enters a confrontation without holding pieces of evidence as precise as a surgical incision. Public opinion is now raising a major question. What compelled such a seasoned dossier analyst to put forward assessments with such explosive impact? Could it be that behind terms such as Operation Cuckoo lies an entire system of hypotheses about lineage and past connections long obscured by the dust of time? In the area reserved for the central figures, observers have noted complex psychological shifts. A prince once renowned for his steely resolve now appears to be confronting shadows never before revealed within his own legacy journey. Alongside him, the visible unease of his spouse, an emblem of Hollywood glamour, has become the focal point of intense scrutiny. Today's video is constructed on the basis of investigative files, analyses from the international press, and hypotheses. This content is documentary and referential in nature, offering an objective perspective on one of the most seismic events of 2026. Some currents of opinion suggest that the emergence of the name Trevor Engelson, alongside analyses of the timeline from 2013 to 2018, is far more than a simple revisiting of the past. It appears to be opening the door to questions of a constitutional nature. If the hypotheses regarding overlaps within archival records have merit, are we witnessing a fundamental redefinition of the entire Sussex brand structure? The courtroom doors may be closed, but the aftershocks it has unleashed will continue to reverberate for decades to come. H. Is Operation Cuckoo a truth gradually coming into the light, or merely a harsh stress test for those who chose to step away from tradition? In a world where information and truth intertwine like a labyrinth, we are not here to declare right or wrong. We are here to witness the collapse of myths and the rise of new questions about transparency. And you, what do you see behind the tears and the sealed files in London? Leave your thoughts from the perspective of an objective observer. Don't forget to subscribe so we can continue unpacking the next set of files together. As the files covering the 2013 to 2018 period are opened, the portrait of an independent, self-directed woman, an image painstakingly constructed by the media, now appears to be facing a completely different reflective lens. In the world of investigators, nothing is accidental. Every footprint left in hotel corridors, every invisible signal from transcontinental phone calls is telling another story of connection. Under the guidance of an analytical mind as sharp as Tom Bower's, the gaps in Meghan's filming schedule in Toronto are no longer seen as ordinary days of rest. He advances a haunting hypothesis. Could the shadow of the past, the figure named Trevor Engelson, have remained present, like a silent satellite orbiting Meghan, even as new chapters of royal romance were being written? The astonishing convergence between unnamed journeys and familiar destinations from the past has created a symphony of suspicions. These are not baseless accusations, but a comparison of mechanical timelines, a method of analysis that any historian or lawyer would be compelled to take seriously. But what truly shook the walls of Kensington Palace was not the numbers, but the voices of the guardians of tradition. Long-serving aides, those who had devoted their lives to keeping the velvet curtains firmly drawn, now appeared to have chosen to step out of the shadows. Why would individuals who once regarded loyalty as a sacred creed decide to break their silence after nearly a decade? Perhaps the weight of what they had witnessed had grown heavier than even the most ancient rules could bear. Their emergence was like that of historical witnesses, offering unprecedented perspectives on what unfolded behind the glittering facade of a so-called love story of the century. The peak of tension centered on discrepancies in traditional protocol. In the centuries-long history of the British royal family, the birth of a new member has always followed the strictest procedures. Yet the records surrounding Archie's arrival now appear shrouded in a legal fog. Why were the validating signatures of royal physicians absent at key moments? Why were core details in the birth records mysteriously altered just months later? This is not mere curiosity about private life, but an inquiry into the transparency of legacy itself. In this grand drama, the prince appears to be portrayed as the most tragic figure of all, a man standing at the boundary between absolute trust and truths that are slowly fracturing. Could it be that he is becoming the central character in a script he himself did not write? As questions surrounding the birth records remain unresolved, Tom Bower delivers what he calls a steel punch to the silence of the courtroom. He declares that he is in possession of copies from the internal archives of the royal security apparatus figures, long regarded as the most tightly sealed eyes and ears in the world. This is not merely the monitoring of private life. In investigative language, it is the surveillance of the integrity of the royal perimeter ahead of a pivotal event. These reports appear to have logged unusual signals, the presence of figures from the past, at the very moment when a new glittering chapter was about to begin. Why? In the moment of direct confrontation with the Prince, Bower did not use the language of hatred. He spoke instead in the language of a philosopher of truth, when he stated, "The truth belongs to no one." it simply exists. London suddenly realized this was no longer a familiar family dispute splashed across the tabloids. This was a historical reckoning, a moment when masks are stripped away to reveal the true structures of power beneath. And Bauer, holding the key to open Pandora's box, is leading the public deep into a connection with a figure that many had tried to erase from royal memory, Trevor Engelson. Why could a Hollywood film producer become a link capable of shaking the line of succession of a dynasty? Bauer does not view Meghan as a victim. Instead, he portrays her as an architect of opportunity. Trevor Engelson is not merely a former husband. In Bauer's investigative files, he is described as the keeper of the original blueprint. He was the man who stood beside her through a difficult decade spent chasing the spotlight. He understands every ambition, every habit, and even the hidden corners along this woman's path toward the conquest of power. Could it be that while the world and the prince himself was enthralled by a modern fairy tale, security files were quietly recording a drama staged with absolute precision? The question Bauer posed before the court seemed to freeze the room. Would a skilled strategist ever truly sever an old line of contact before being certain they were securely anchored on a new island? Based on what he calls abnormal communication patterns, Bauer's investigation is gradually exposing a web of unnamed interactions. This is the very core of the lawsuit, where the truth about loyalty is weighed against personal calculation. Evidence of overlapping lines of communication not only destabilizes Meghan's position, but also raises a painful question about the prince's capacity for awareness throughout that period. The final months of 2016 through early 2017 were not merely a time of roses and flashing cameras in London. Behind the velvet curtain, Tom Bauer sketches a reality of parallel digital currents, P. Through encrypted communication channels and anonymous identities, a network of connections to the past appears to have continued operating quietly in the shadows. Why would someone standing on the threshold of a dynasty require such an elaborate contingency plan? Is this the instinct of a strategist who prepares for every possible scenario, or the preservation of a bond that cannot yet be severed? The most shocking element in Bauer's files lies in his analysis of the tempo of history. He places a large question mark over the unusual haste with which a formal engagement was established. In the world of dynasties, haste is often accompanied by invisible pressures from outside forces. However, Bauer offers a far more ruthless perspective. Could this have been a race against time to legitimize a biological reality? If the alleged overlaps in relationships are real, then choosing a harbor that confers ultimate power and status is no longer a matter of the heart, but a strategic verdict designed to secure the future. When it comes to Archie Harrison, Bauer does not resort to emotional language. He places the issue squarely within the legal framework of the Act of Succession. This is where cinematic plot twists transform into a national crisis. If suspicions regarding genetic congruence between the prince and the heir have any basis, we are no longer talking about a family secret. We are talking about the legitimacy of royal bloodlines and the integrity of the Constitution itself. A deviation in the genetic map at this moment could be seen as a rupture of national trust, shaking the very foundations of all privileges and titles. Bauer offers an entirely new explanation for the seismic events of 2020. Rather than citing privacy concerns or media turmoil, he characterizes Megxit as a strategic withdrawal. The true objective, he argues, was not the pursuit of freedom, but the removal of genetic secrets from the oversight of royal physicians. the traditional gatekeepers of stringent verification protocols. Leaving the stone walls of the palace for the freedom of Hollywood could thus be seen as an effort to shield a genetic illusion before physical traits begin to speak for themselves over time. Look at the prince in that moment, the man who built a fortress to protect his family, only to now confront the possibility that he has been guarding the most sophisticated lie of the century. Tom Bower ends his presentation with a haunting question suspended in the hushed air of the courtroom. What does a son's sacrifice for his lineage mean if from the very beginning the foundation of that sacrifice was built on a distorted map? Why California? Why choose the land with some of the strictest privacy protection laws in the world? In Tom Bower's analysis, the move to America's West Coast was not merely a journey in search of personal freedom. He calls it the construction of a legal fortress. California, with its stringent data privacy regulations, appears to have become the most effective shield against any probing into personal records. The ghost of the past, known as Trevor Engelson, is no longer a distant memory. It has become a living presence, steadily tearing apart the Sussexes' carefully laid plans for the future. F. Many people mistakenly believe that Buckingham Palace is a passive entity in the face of upheaval. But according to the records Bower was able to access, the reality is quite the opposite. Under the reign of the late Queen Elizabeth II, an emblem of unwavering devotion to the crown's legitimacy, no ambiguity was ever permitted to exist within the bloodline. Bower delivered a revelation that sent shockwaves through the courtroom as early as May 2019. Behind the public's celebration and joy, a heritage verification protocol was quietly set into motion. Under the guise of routine health examinations for a new family member, a genetic analysis process was quietly carried out. Its purpose was not curiosity, but to safeguard the survival and succession of the monarchy. So where are the results of that heritage verification? Bower asserts that this report has never been made public. It was sealed by time and stored in the deepest vaults beneath the palace wine cellars, accessible only to those who hold the highest keys of power. The existence of this sealed report raises a painful question. Why was the truth not revealed as early as 2019? Why did the palace choose silence, a silence Bower calls complicity, for the sake of survival? Tom Bower's explanation carries the tone of a political philosopher. He argues that at that moment in time, exposing a deviation in the bloodline would have triggered a constitutional earthquake that no institution could have withstood. Truth, he suggests, was traded for stability. R. The palace chose to keep this secret not to protect Meghan, but to safeguard the sanctity of the royal legacy against the swirling tempests of global public opinion. Yet that silence seems to have become a ticking time bomb, and now under the spotlight of the 2026 courtroom, the fuse has begun to burn. Imagine the collapse of an empire where the very bricks of its foundation start to shift from their places. British royal history is no stranger to such upheavals. In 2019, the world had already witnessed violent waves tied to controversial associations involving senior members of the institution. But according to Tom Bower's analysis, that was only the visible tip of the iceberg. If a new fracture were to emerge this time, striking directly at the lifeblood of inheritance within the line of succession, then the credibility of a 1,000-year-old institution would face an unprecedented trial. Standing at history's crossroads, those who hold the fate of the crown from King Charles to Prince William, appear to have confronted an existential dilemma: should they choose absolute transparency and risk public trust, or opt for a form of strategic silence to preserve the structure of the institution itself? Bauer argues that the second path was chosen. This form of humane conservatism inadvertently gave rise to what he calls a media monster. The palace's silence itself became an invisible protective shield. When one side knows the other will never dare to speak in its own defense for fear of collapsing the foundations, media counterattacks through documentary footage and high-profile interviews begin to grow sharper and more ruthless than ever. Yet within this bleak tableau, Tom Bauer sketches a deeply tragic portrait of the prince, the man he describes as the most painful victim of all leaks. He uses the concept of a glass cage of illusions to describe Harry's reality. A man who chose to stand against the entire world, sever blood ties, and sacrifice every privilege to protect what he believes to be truth and love. But does he realize that he may be defending a meticulously constructed genetic narrative? Bauer advances a deeply unsettling hypothesis: could the pure faith of a father be transformed into a tool for a power grab, one in which he himself is entirely unaware? Bauer's testimony about the secret DNA report is not merely an accusation, it is a wake-up call about the hollowness behind solemn rituals. If his analyses of a deviation in bloodline are well-founded, then Archie VII in the line of succession would become a stranger within his own lineage. The presence of a name in the line of succession without congruence of hereditary legacy would create an unprecedented precedent in constitutional law. It would turn oaths of loyalty into looming question marks and place the entire future of the modern monarchy in an extraordinarily precarious position. Content provided for reference/hypothetical purposes only. As the testimonies at the January 2026 trial draw to a close, we are left with a harsh reality. The price of the silence the monarchy has maintained for so many years is no longer gold. It has become a colossal debt, a block of explosives threatening to incinerate every legacy. In the world of dynasties, silence has long been a refined diplomatic instrument, but now it resonates like a wordless indictment. Look at the history of those residing in Montecito through a cold, objective lens. We are talking about a woman who has never hesitated to step into the fiercest legal battles to defend even the smallest fragment of her privacy. From lawsuits over unwanted photographs to taking on major media conglomerates over a private letter, she has consistently demonstrated an uncompromising resolve. But why, when faced with an allegation that could completely erase the reputation, title, and future of her own son, does that legal sword suddenly appear to have gone rusty G? Why, until now, has the Sussex office, normally hypersensitive to even the slightest tremors of public opinion, allowed terms like Trevor Engelson or Operation Cuckoo to circulate freely across global media? Before we dive deeper into the secret DNA report allegedly hidden in the palace wine cellar, I want to hear your predictions. Do you believe this is a truth slowly coming to light or merely a ruthless media attack? Leave a comment with the number 2 if you see this scenario as a tragedy for Harry, and 5 if you believe this is an uncompromising political chess game. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the final chapter of this case. Why has no defamation lawsuit been filed immediately to silence Tom Bauer, the man who appears to be wagering his entire career on these testimonies? In the modern world, there is only one way that is fast and absolutely effective at ending every conspiracy theory: a public heritage verification. A transparent biological authentication conducted under the supervision of independent authorities would be the decisive blow to protect Archie's legitimacy. It would put an end to all doubt. And yet, the decision to retreat into the shadows is raising a bigger question than ever before. Is this silence not contempt for the rumors, but rather a final fortress guarding a truth that cannot be confronted? We are standing at the threshold of a new era, one in which the deepest secrets of dynasties are no longer protected by stone walls. Is this the collapse of an illusion or the beginning of a necessary reckoning? Is the silence from Montecito the calm of the innocent or the labored breathing of a script racing toward its final act? The truth, no matter how long it is buried, will eventually find its way into the light. Could it be that counter-evidence cannot be produced simply because that truth never belonged to them in the first place? When we look back at Meghan Markle's legal strategy over the years, a clear pattern emerges: swift, decisive, and overwhelming action against any perceived intrusion. The current silence, therefore, does not bring a sense of calm. It creates a kind of auditory dissonance. It runs so sharply against her instinct for self-defense that it leaves a void filled with doubt in the public consciousness. OA. At the eye of this storm, Harry emerges as the most tragic figure of all. From anonymous sources, the image of a prince living in isolation within the Montecito fortress is deeply haunting. Try placing yourself in the position of someone who has wagered everything from titles and military protection to the most sacred blood ties with his father and brother. All of those sacrifices were made under an absolute belief in love and in his own bloodline. Now he must face a brutal prospect if everything he has defended for so long was built upon a foundation of shifting sand made of distortions. Then the collapse would not merely be an emotional wound, it would be the shattering of an entire life philosophy. If the hypotheses about a deviation in lineage were true, the consequences for Archie would amount to the most brutal stripping of identity. The child would not only lose a place in the line of succession, but also an entire world-view. Politically, this story has moved far beyond the boundaries of a single family. It has struck at the very legitimacy of the nation. Tom Bower has ignited a battle in which genetic records could become the spark forcing the highest authorities, such as the British Parliament, to intervene. In this game of royal power, the truth may be concealed behind layers of international legal secrecy, but history has shown one constant: the truth always finds a crack through which it can slip into the open. So, who truly holds the decisive card in this game of chess? Is it Tom Bower with his network of silent witnesses deep within the palace? Is it Buckingham Palace itself, pursuing a strategy of institutional preservation at all costs? Or is Meghan Markle the one holding the key, able to either fling this door of truth wide open or seal it shut forever? The courtroom doors in London may close, but the search for truth has only just begun. Will that truth be a gift of redemption, or a fire that burns away what remains of a love story once admired by the entire world? Can a verdict truly deliver absolute vindication, or will it become the final sentence that destroys a reputation forever? The first trial in London may have concluded, but its aftershocks have not faded. On the contrary, they are generating powerful shockwaves seeping into every corner of the monarchy. At this moment, calls from Parliament for a national-level investigation are growing louder by the day. Constitutional experts have been summoned to re-examine one of the most sacred documents of all, the order of royal succession. Imagine the historical repercussions. If an official investigation were to be triggered, this would no longer be fodder for tabloid headlines. It would become a formal process of verifying an heir's legitimacy. At that point, proof of genetic congruence would be required as a mandatory procedure. Figures from the past, such as Trevor Engelson, could be compelled to step into the light and testify under oath before the law. Every communication record, every timeline from 2016 to 2018 would be placed under the government's microscope. This is an unprecedented constitutional crisis in the modern history of the United Kingdom. Behind the numbers and legal statutes lie profound human tragedies. For the prince, the psychological devastation is almost beyond words. Every moment of happiness, every cherished photograph, now seems veiled in a fog of doubt. Can a man who sacrificed everything to protect his family truly accept the reality that the fortress he labored to build stands upon a foundation that may not even exist? And for the young child, the most innocent figure in this maelstrom, this would be the most painful stripping of identity of all. If Bauer's hypotheses are true, the child's entire worldview and sense of origin would be shattered, leaving psychological wounds that could echo across generations. This legal process is in reality only the opening shot. Sources close to the matter indicate that Tom Bauer is still holding undisclosed trump cards correspondence and assertions of staggering weight that have yet to be revealed. At this moment, the Sussex legal team finds itself trapped in a paralyzing paradox. If they choose legal action, they would inadvertently open the door to the process of discovery in which genetic tests and personal records could be compelled into the open under legal supervision. If they remain silent, these allegations will act like acid, slowly corroding credibility and reputation over time. Buckingham Palace itself appears to be facing one of the most profound no-win dilemmas in the history of modern media. If they were to confirm the assessments outlined in Tom Bauer's files, they would inadvertently be admitting to a systemic failure in heritage verification spanning many years. Conversely, if they choose outright denial without presenting concrete counter-evidence, they would be pushing themselves into a weakened position against the trump cards held by a seasoned journalist like Bauer. In this chess match, the only clear beneficiaries may be the architects of news themselves, the media outlets enjoying a new golden age reminiscent of the post-1990s upheavals. But behind the sensational headlines lies a very real catastrophe for everyone involved. From Harry and Meghan to the future of those in the line of succession, all are being pulled into a vortex where the boundary between truth and legal maneuvering grows more blurred than ever. Will the truth find its way into the light through the final sealed files, or will it remain forever as fragments buried beneath multiple layers of power and institutional self-preservation? In examining these shocking details, we must use reason to pose the most fundamental questions. Tom Bauer is no newcomer. He is a figure who has spent a lifetime building a reputation on ironclad evidence. Giving sworn testimony in a court of law is an act that wagers not only one's career, but personal freedom itself. Would a mind as sharp as his truly risk everything on unfounded speculation? Another major question looms if all of these doubts are baseless. Why has the fastest and most effective solution, a transparent verification of biological origin, never been carried out? An independent verification process overseen by neutral parties would be the definitive end to every media nightmare. Prolonged silence, rather than a masterful legal strategy, now seems increasingly like a troubling signal of a truth too difficult to confront. If the palace truly holds evidence capable of fully exonerating the Sussexes, what reason could be great enough to justify keeping it sealed away in locked vaults? And why, in the frames capturing moments inside the courtroom, does the prince's face appear so haunted and anguished? Is that gaze an expression of outrage at injustice, or the fear of a man beginning to realize that the foundations of the world he stands upon are starting to crack? The London story of 2026 is not merely a lawsuit. It is a test of trust and truth in the information age. Truth always finds its own way to seep through the cracks of power. Why is it that at decisive moments people so often choose not to look one another in the eye? These questions never come with comfortable answers, and it is precisely that act of avoidance that has created a powerful gravitational pull, drawing the attention of the entire world toward London. What began as a royal love ballad, a modern fairy tale celebrated by all of humanity, now appears to be on the brink of becoming one of the greatest historical illusions of the contemporary monarchy. Tom Bower's testimonies are not merely legal words on a page. They are beams of light cast into hidden corners, exposing what had long been regarded as a meticulously constructed script. Ix. Whether you choose to believe Bower's evidence or dismiss it as the harshest media assault ever directed at the Sussexes, one truth is undeniable: the questions that have been raised will never disappear. They will echo through the historical record, planting seeds of doubt about everything we once believed regarding Harry and Meghan's journey. As Bower himself declared before the court, "The truth belongs to no one. It simply exists." No glossy media campaign, no legal threat, and no strategy of silence can bury it forever beneath the dust of time. For Harry, the tragedy lies in the sheer irony of fate. A man who spent his entire life trying to shield those he loved from public scrutiny he believes caused his mother such profound pain, now finds that those very efforts have inadvertently unleashed the most ferocious storm of scrutiny imaginable. For Meghan, who relinquished the crown to build a personal empire, this gambit carries life-or-death stakes. If the hypotheses of a hereditary discrepancy were to be substantiated, the entire structure of power branding and credibility she painstakingly built would face instantaneous collapse. And amid the vortex of adult calculations, the image of the innocent child Archie looms hauntingly large. An uncertain future awaits one in which personal identity is placed on the scales of power struggles. Ultimately, for the British monarchy, an institution that has endured wars and centuries of upheaval, this is the ultimate trial of fate. R. Can an ancient dynasty survive and maintain its legitimacy in an era of absolute transparency where biological evidence holds the power to rewrite history itself? We are not merely watching a court case. We are witnessing the fracturing of a myth. Truth is a bitter medicine, but it is the only thing capable of healing the wounds of doubt. Now we want to hear your voices, the most objective observers of all. How do you assess Tom Bower's sharp and provocative arguments? Is this an elaborate search for truth, or merely a last-ditch effort to shatter a media icon? Would an immediate, transparent decision on biological verification be the most effective move for the Sussex side to protect their reputation, or is silence at this moment the deeper strategy? And as for the prince, the man standing at the center of the storm, is he the keeper of a great secret, or is he himself a tragic figure still searching for the answer to his own life? This information is for reference only based on hypotheses, rumors, and unverified public opinions. Let's discuss this issue from an objective, analytical perspective. Don't stay on the sidelines in the shadows of curiosity. Share your thoughts right below in the comments. Press 1. If you believe these secrets need to be brought into the open. Press 0 if you remain skeptical and think this is merely a political chess game. Your support is the motivation that keeps us going. Don't forget to like and subscribe to join us on this journey of unraveling the truth behind power and legacy. H. At the heart of London, where the stone walls of Buckingham Palace have stood firm for centuries, there has always been a captivating contrast. On one hand, it is a symbol of stability and unchanging tradition. On the other, observers pose a major question. Is that stillness a sign of true calm, or merely a flawless facade concealing powerful undercurrents of change? Recently, international public opinion has been abuzz with speculation about a quiet transition, one in which figures long regarded as operating behind the scenes are gradually stepping into the spotlight to reshape the established order. In a world of ritual, every step and every glance carries its own hidden code. Unverified sources suggest that the presence of Queen Camilla appears to be facing unprecedented challenges from the very long-standing pillars of the family itself. The hypothesis of necessary conservatism speculation has centered on Princess Anne, often hailed as the hardest-working member of the royal family. Is there or is there not a clear divide in viewpoints between deeply rooted tradition and the changes unfolding today? Some analysts suggest that Anne may be assuming the role of a guardian of legacy, one for whom the stories of the past are not easily erased by time. The alliance of the future, the emergence of Princess Kate within this narrative, only adds to the drama of the hypothesis. Could there be a tacit consensus among the palace's generations of women about redefining what it means to be a true symbol? To fully understand the current tensions, we must look to the flow of history itself. This is not the first time the monarchy has faced a convergence of divergent opinions. From the transformative reforms of Henry VIII to the controversial romances of George IV, royal history has always been a series of choices between personal emotion and public duty. It seems that every era requires a catalyst for evolution, and in the hypothetical scenario we are examining, Camilla's presence may well represent the greatest test of the monarchy's capacity to adapt in the 21st century. Behind closed doors, what is truth and what is merely fragments of speculation, pressures of loyalty, responsibility, and public image can create challenges that outsiders can scarcely comprehend. Are we witnessing an internal reckoning aimed at long-term sustainability, or are these simply the inevitable aftershocks of a monarchy in transition? Where will these changes ultimately place the British royal family on the map of history? What do you think of this hypothesis? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and together we will decode it in the upcoming discussions. In the digital age, life for members of Buckingham Palace is no longer limited to state visits or ceremonial appearances. Through the lens of systems analysts, they are living inside a vast glass chamber where every breath and every exchanged glance is decoded like a form of political cipher. Why does the public constantly search for signs of fracture? Perhaps because excessive perfection often feels unreal. As a result, even the smallest gesture from King Charles or other members can become the focal point of a storm of speculation about secret alliances or simmering animosities beneath the surface. The presence of Queen Camilla within the current power structure is regarded as a unique variable. From an analytical perspective, Her transition from a controversial figure to the consort at the apex of the monarchy has been a journey marked by immense pressure. The hypothesis of division raises the question of whether the royal system has truly been able to absorb this presence. Some informed voices argue that her ascent has not only polarized public opinion, but also created a kind of mechanical pressure on internal relationships where old and new values are colliding with particular force. If the royal family is viewed as a smoothly functioning system, then the departure of Harry and Meghan represents a structural rupture that is difficult to conceal. Explosive interviews and direct criticism from the outside inadvertently stripped away the glossy veneer exposing internal contradictions that had previously been dismissed as mere family matters. In a highly dramatic hypothetical scenario, this event is seen as the catalyst that escalated long-standing tensions within the palace into an existential challenge for the monarchy itself. The focus of attention is now converging on a figure who is discreet yet formidable, Princess Anne. In in-depth analyses, Anne is often portrayed as a guardian of the monarchy's most exacting standards. Hypothetical analysis asks whether there could be a shocking revelation from her regarding the queen consort's position. Some bold theories suggest that Anne may be acting as an arbiter, raising serious questions about whether Camilla's presence aligns with the system's long-term future. If true, this would not merely be a personal disagreement, but a struggle to safeguard the integrity of the dynasty itself. Buckingham Palace today resembles a chessboard filled with countless potential moves. Leaks about reconsidering the position of a key figure may be nothing more than trial balloons to gauge public reaction, or they could signal the early stages of a comprehensive overhaul. Will the monarchy choose to preserve a flawless exterior, or will it confront its fractures head-on in order to restructure? And in this intricate power game, who will ultimately be the one to uphold the very foundations of the royal institution amid the turbulence of a changing era? In a system whose existence is measured in millennia, each individual functions like a cog within a vast machine. Princess Anne and Princess Kate have long been regarded as quiet architects, shaping the image of a dutiful and principled monarchy. If Anne embodies iron discipline and absolute loyalty to duty, Kate represents composure and refined diplomacy. What then happens when these two inherently steady pillars appear in hypotheses of discord with the new center of power, Queen Camilla? Let us view Princess Anne through the lens of a guardian of legacy. Princess Anne, with her notable bluntness, may not merely be expressing personal character, but rather activating a mechanism to protect that legacy. Her caution toward Camilla is not personal animosity, but a systemic self-defense response. In the eyes of conservatives, disruption within the royal family represents a dangerous variable. Any confrontation at the coronation banquet, if it occurred, would not be a personal clash, but a confrontation between conservatism and adaptation. If Anne chooses a direct approach, Kate employs a different language of power, the absence of protocol. In symbolic analysis, circles the act of not curtsying during the coronation is considered an explosive detail. Within the royal system, a curtsy is not merely a gesture of respect, it is an acknowledgement of hierarchy. The absence of this gesture from someone as impeccably protocol-conscious as Kate raised a significant question. Was it a simple oversight or a silent declaration of reluctance to fully accept a new order? Kate's silence at times carries more weight than 1,000 words, hinting at an undercurrent of polarization unfolding beneath the veneer of unity. Why does everything circle back to tradition? because in the royal world tradition is the single thread preventing the dynasty from unraveling amid social upheaval. Even the smallest breach of long-standing rules can trigger a domino effect leading to systemic disorder. From the perspective of some key figures, Camilla's presence appears to be testing the very limits of those binding threads. Buckingham Palace is not merely the residence of a family. It is a battleground of ideologies. On one side stands the steadfast adherence to traditional values embodied by Anne and Kate. On the other, the effort of the Queen Consort to assert her position. Are the notions of removal or purification raised by these hypotheses truly taking place, or is this simply a painful process of adaptation, allowing the monarchy to move into a new era? The answer likely does not lie in official statements, but in glances exchanged, steps taken, and the curtsies that will or will not appear in the future. In the royal world, a curtsy has never been merely a gesture of politeness. It is a digital signature affirming hierarchy and absolute acknowledgement of power and status. From a systems perspective, observing how members bow to one another is how the public deciphers the true power map of Buckingham Palace. At the coronation, the most symbolically charged event of a reign, the actions of the Princess of Wales fell under the media's microscope. The absence of a formal, unmistakable curtsy from Kate toward Queen Camilla gave rise to a startling hypothesis. Was this merely a technical oversight or a subtle message sent from the future of the dynasty? Before we delve deeper into the ghosts of the past surrounding the palace, I'd really like to hear your perspective. Based on the analysis so far, do you see Queen Camilla as a woman of resilience and capability, or simply as a fault line causing division? If you support her and believe she is competent, leave a comment with the number 2. If you disagree with her current position, leave the number 5. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe right now, so you won't miss the next episodes where we continue to decode these shocking developments. Some voices suggest that we may be witnessing a subtle modernization of the royal image. Rather than elaborate rituals, a gentle nod from Kate could be interpreted as an expression of minimalism in the era of King Charles III. However, analysts pose a sharper question for someone long regarded as a symbol of propriety. Like Kate, could such subtlety truly be accidental? The hypothesis of silent resistance emerges when the wife of the future king, entrusted with safeguarding traditional values, chooses to meet the Queen's gaze directly. Instead of bowing her head, it may be seen as a deliberate act of crossing the line. Is Kate setting a new boundary for respect and power? To understand the current tension, we cannot avoid invoking a name that has become legendary: Princess Diana. Consider a hypothetical question. If the consort on the throne that day had been Diana, would the atmosphere at Buckingham have been different? The legacy of the past weighs heavily, and a widely held hypothesis suggests that Camilla's presence remains an unhealed scar in the hearts of the princes and those most deeply tied to Diana's enduring legacy. If the upheavals of the past had never occurred, would Harry have left? Would the rift between the brothers have grown so deep? Perhaps behind Kate's steady gaze lies a convergence of emotions that have never been spoken aloud. Could she be acting as a representative of a shared, unvoiced sentiment held by those who believe that position once belonged to someone else? Even so, we must acknowledge a harsh reality in the royal world. Personal emotion is often required to yield to law and absolute order. Kate Middleton is not merely a woman with private thoughts, she is a model for future heirs. Bypassing an important ritual may be seen as a risky distraction, but it could also be a strategic move in the monarchy's transformation under King Charles. The ultimate goal is to ensure the dynasty's survival, yet the price may sometimes be the sacrifice of rules that have existed for centuries. Was Kate's nod toward Camilla a gesture of refined respect, or the punctuation mark ending an era of absolute deference? And how will these simmering tensions reshape the face of the British royal family when William and Kate formally assume the throne? Every detail, no matter how small, may be a fragment of a major transformation we are only just beginning to perceive. In your view, are the silence and shifting gestures of the Princess of Wales a sign of modernization, or do they reflect a divide that cannot be healed? The British monarchy, an institution built on pillars of permanence, now appears to be standing at a historic crossroads. To survive in the 21st century, this system may be forced into a process of natural selection, preserving its core values while letting go of rules that have grown rigid with time. Reconsidering long-standing rituals such as the curtsy can be seen as part of a risky yet necessary modernization strategy. The ultimate aim is to ensure that this transition does not undermine the foundations of the monarchy while remaining flexible enough to avoid being dismissed as a relic of the past. From the public's perspective, the actions of the Princess of Wales have sparked a fascinating wave of mixed reactions. Rather than being viewed as a mistake, many have interpreted them as a breath of fresh air. The hypothesis of independence emerges here. Could we be witnessing a new generation of royals refusing to play the role of pre-programmed puppets? Some observers argue that the willingness to challenge rigid rules reveals Kate's independent mindset, where personal emotion and perspective are beginning to carry greater weight than centuries-old values. However, all change encounters resistance. For staunch traditionalists, the act of curtsying is not merely a sign of personal respect, but a symbol of social stability and order. They believe that no individual, no matter how influential, has the right to stand above legacies that have endured across generations of reigns. This contradiction fuels an endless spiral of debate. Is the relaxation of protocol a step toward modernity, or the beginning of fractures within a system built on absolute formality? While Kate represents subtle change, Princess Anne has emerged as the figure most clearly reflecting dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs. Anne's caution toward Queen Camilla appears to go beyond personal tension. Why would someone as devoted to duty as Anne view Camilla as an incompatible variable? Perhaps in her eyes, Camilla's presence carries past mistakes and controversies that could cloud the perceived purity of the monarchy. The royal drama thus becomes not merely a story of personal relationships, but a struggle to protect a standard that Anne believes is under threat. The transformation of Buckingham Palace is a quiet, yet highly dramatic process, its pace shaped by internal acceptance and reactions from the outside world. The controversies surrounding Queen Camilla and the responses of the two princesses are simply the latest chapters in a history book that is being rewritten in real time. Will a more modern monarchy bring it closer to the people, or will the loss of traditional rituals cause the dynasty's aura to fade? In the flow of history, some stories do not end when their main characters exit the stage. Instead, they become shadow legacies that linger over the present. The life of Queen Camilla is a striking example of how the past can shape and sometimes imprison public perception for decades. Recently, as her status has been elevated, the codes of the 1980s and 1990s have once again been decoded through a lens of skepticism. Are we witnessing the mercy of time, or simply a perfectly executed media campaign designed to reconstruct an icon once rejected? Let us turn back to the turbulent era of the 1980s. In socio-psychological analysis, the bond between King Charles III and Camilla has often been described as a parallel system existing outside the framework of traditional royal rules. The arrival of Diana the People's Princess established a standard of purity against which any external intrusion was perceived as a serious systemic fault. Archival sources recall the iconic remark about three people in a marriage not merely as a complaint, but as a confirmation of a fractured structure. Camilla's long-standing presence in the shadows inadvertently forged her image as a counterweight to Diana, ensuring that every step she later took would be subjected to intense scrutiny. The year 1994 is often viewed as a breaking point in the monarchy's image strategy. The explosive interview with Jonathan Dimbleby was not simply a confession of an unconventional relationship, but through an investigative lens, a high-risk attempt at enforced transparency. However, rather than easing tensions, it backfired by reinforcing the hypothesis that Camilla was the very cause of the collapse of a beloved icon. In the eyes of traditionalists and Diana's admirers, Camilla appeared to be permanently cast as a disruptor of order, a stain that no title could easily erase. The tragic events of 1997 in Paris were not only a profound loss for the monarchy, but also a turning point that completely reshaped Camilla's position and destiny. Diana's absence left behind an immense vacuum of both power and emotion. From a figure once fiercely opposed, Camilla began a process of quiet neutralization. She rarely appeared, choosing patience as a strategy for survival. Could it be that this endurance, her silence, and willingness to remain in the shadows for years gradually shifted the public's emotional frequency? A segment of the public moved from hostility to curiosity and ultimately toward a conditional form of acceptance. Today, as Camilla officially stands at the pinnacle of her role as queen consort, old questions continue to linger. Is this position a recognition of enduring love or the outcome of a finely calibrated exercise in power? Is her presence genuinely accepted by younger figures such as Anne and Kate, or are they merely adhering to a silent pact to safeguard the monarchy's survival? The past may have receded, but the fractures it left behind remain an inseparable part of the modern royal landscape. In 2005, when wedding bells rang to mark the official union of Charles and Camilla, observers noted a pivotal detail in the language of power, the title, Princess Consort. Why not Queen from the outset? Through the lens of systems analysts, this was not merely a name, but a form of public opinion buffer. One hypothesis suggests that the palace was making a strategic calculation. At the time, they understood that Camilla's presence remained too powerful an emotional trigger for those who revered the memory of Diana. Lowering the title was a calculated concession, a prudent move to preserve the stability of the monarchy during a highly sensitive transitional period. Time may soften fractures, but it cannot fully erase old frequencies. In 2022, when Charles formally ascended the throne, Camilla's elevation to the title of Queen Consort immediately triggered another storm of hypotheses. For a segment of the public still carrying Diana's legacy, this act was perceived as a profound symbolic rupture. Was the granting of this title a personal wish of the king or an inevitable step to reinforce the monarchy's legitimacy? The voices of opposition are not directed at an individual alone. They are defending a myth forever sealed by the tragic death of 1997. In their eyes, replacing a position once associated with Diana with Camilla appears to be a form of rewriting history that not everyone is prepared to accept. Yet when we look more closely at the palace's operations, we can discern a sustained effort to recode and reinterpret Camilla as a person. Rather than confronting criticism head-on, she chose the path of quiet service. Camilla's focus on causes such as literacy and animal welfare has been assessed by media experts as a strategy of humanizing the symbol. Could this be her way of building a parallel legacy in which tangible contributions serve as a counterweight to past controversies? Her reputation is being carefully reconstructed from the smallest pieces through patronages, steady commitment, and composed public appearances. Yet no matter how great the effort, the corridors of history continue to echo with voices that refuse to fade. The past still casts its shadow over every action of the current queen. Critics ask whether present-day dedication carries enough weight to eclipse memories of the once shocking third person. Perhaps Camilla's greatest challenge is not the fulfillment of royal duties, but persuading an entire generation that she is a worthy successor to a role burdened with immense pressure and expectation. In a system where image is the ultimate weapon, we are witnessing a sustained effort to shift the axis of public perception. In recent years, Camilla's presence has no longer been associated with glamorous banquets, but instead with appearances in society's overlooked and uncomfortable spaces. Her focus on sensitive issues such as domestic violence is viewed by analysts as a highly strategic move. Could this be an attempt to establish a new frequency of connection with the public, one in which empathy is prioritized over historical controversy? Some hypotheses suggest that by standing alongside the vulnerable, she is gradually peeling away a negative label that has persisted for decades. However, real-life efforts often collide head-on with the power of mass media. The emergence of dramatized cinematic works, most notably the series The Crown, has generated a distinct socio-psychological phenomenon. These productions are not merely entertainment, they function as a filter pulling the hidden corners of the past back into the center of contemporary debate. When cinema portrays a figure through shades of intrigue and hidden calculation, it inadvertently reinforces long-standing stereotypes in the public mind. For many younger viewers, this cinematic lens has become a primary source of reference, blurring the line between historical fact and scripted dramatization. This is the invisible barrier that even the most sincere charitable efforts cannot overcome overnight. No matter how hard one tries to distance oneself from the turbulence of an era, one reality remains undeniable. Royal history is a living entity. The public's continued questioning around Princess Diana is not merely an expression of hostility, but a form of loyalty to an emotional legacy. Some viewpoints suggest that sustaining skepticism toward Camilla is a way for the public to protect the memory of a turbulent chapter in the monarchy's history. In this scenario, Camilla is not simply confronting public opinion. She is facing a ghostly legacy, one in which every present action is weighed against what has been lost. Upon officially assuming the role of Queen Consort, Camilla has demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability within the royal structure. Yet her legacy will always remain a complex symphony composed of present-day efforts intertwined with echoes of a past that has never fully faded. The shift in public perception may not depend on whether the past can be erased, but on whether the present is strong enough to create an entirely new and distinct chapter. Time is a master craftsman, capable of softening even the sharpest edges of history. Observing Queen Camilla's journey, analysts have noted a quiet shift in the collective psyche. From a figure once pushed to the margins of traditional moral norms, she has carved out her own trajectory, one in which growing authority and calm, restrained action have gradually earned trust. This is not merely the story of an individual, but a compelling example of adaptive survival within a monarchical institution. Could her presence be the very catalyst needed to shape a more modern, more pragmatic face for the British monarchy in a new era? When we examine the current power structure more closely, we see an image of Camilla built upon two pillars: atonement and perseverance. She has chosen to confront storms of public opinion through tireless service. Aligning her name with humanitarian causes appears not merely as duty, but as a deliberate way to redefine the meaning of her presence within the palace itself. Although the past remains a persistent shadow, her dedication to community values has turned her into an indispensable component of Buckingham's current operating system. Her legacy, therefore, is no longer a single linear narrative, but a complex matrix woven from past mistakes and renewed efforts. Yet within a system that prizes continuity as deeply as the monarchy does the presence of guardians of tradition, inevitably creates resistance. The most striking focal point of this tension is the attitude of Princess Anne, long regarded as the embodiment of discipline and unwavering loyalty to the monarchy's original values. The hypothesis surrounding Anne's dissatisfaction is not merely about personal conflict. It represents a broader question of compatibility. Can a system truly remain stable when its core contains controversial precedents? Anne's caution appears to serve as a reminder that no matter how the future is constructed, the strict standards of the past continue to exist as a form of oversight. We have traveled a long path in decoding the layers of emotion and power surrounding the presence of Queen Camilla. A life marked by trials, a complex path where every step is placed under the microscope of history. Faced with these data and analyses, what do you think about the fairness of our judgments? Are the firm reactions from figures such as Princess Anne a necessary defense of the monarchy's honor, or do they represent an obstacle to the inevitable evolution of the times? Is questioning the Queen's position at this stage a justified action, or should we accept change as an inherent part of the law of evolution itself? This information is for reference only based on unverified hypotheses, rumors, and public opinion. Let's discuss the issue from an objective analytical perspective. Don't just observe, leave your mark, press 1 if you want to explore more hidden variables of the monarchy. Press 0 if you're skeptical and believe what we see is only the tip of the iceberg. If you enjoy in-depth analysis, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue decoding the mysteries of power together. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for the next deep dive. In the world of symbols and heritage, sometimes silence carries more weight than 1,000 words. We are witnessing a historical split, not just within a family, but within the very concept of power in this new era. On one side is the dazzling light of the media, where personal stories are woven into focal points. On the other is the stillness of London's ancient walls, where chess pieces are being set for a future longer than any television contract. Numerous observers suggest that Prince William is exhibiting the demeanor of a chief architect of the future. Instead of reacting to the onslaught of public opinion, he chooses to strengthen the foundations of the institution. The question now is no longer, will it happen, but when is the optimal time? Redefining titles is not merely an individual act, but a symbolic restructuring. In an era of transparency, possessing a title is no longer seen as an immutable privilege, but a responsibility tied to genuine dedication. Across the ocean, we see a familiar motif, the clamor of press releases and the relentless pursuit of prominence in the global news flow. However, there is a systemic truth that few mention titles within a dynasty are not mere ornaments to be possessed. They are the very breath of tradition. When direct blood ties are no longer the sole basis, the distinction between heir and companion becomes more pronounced than ever in ancient ceremonial rules. While the world is preoccupied with analyzing dramatic interviews and memoirs in London, a new blueprint for the monarchy is emerging. These are not petty debates. This is the transformation of an institution to adapt to the 21st century. With a single signature, the structure of a millennia-old heritage can be rewritten, discarding elements no longer relevant to safeguard the overall existence. Will individual freedom or family duty prevail on this chessboard of power? The answer lies in patience, for in the game of dynasties, the winner is not the one who speaks the loudest, but the last one standing when the spotlight fades. While the outside world is awash in sensational headlines behind the solid oak doors of Kensington and Clarence House, a different script is being rewritten. No cameras, no bombastic pronouncements, just strategic records and quiet discussions that have dragged on for years. To understand what is truly happening, we must look into the intellectual divide between the two generations of top leadership, the current crown holder and his successor. King Charles, as a conciliatory father and monarch, always believed in second chances. His philosophy was one of tolerance, an attempt to mend rifts with afternoon tea and patience. He saw the prodigal sons, but Prince William saw the systemic risks. William arrived at a far more stoic and realistic conclusion. Institutions cannot exist based on emotions. In the eyes of the successor, protecting the millennia-old heritage is the ultimate priority, transcending all personal feelings. What is being quietly built is not a plan for revenge, but rather a self-defense mechanism. William understood that when a name tied to traditional values is used as a commercial tool, from podcasts to book covers, its sanctity is eroded. The precedent was there. What had happened to previous members of the family was proof of the system's resolve. This wasn't revenge, but a revolution, necessary surgery to ensure the purity of future leadership. There was a pivotal moment in those private conversations where William bluntly pointed out that ill-timed benevolence could become a vulnerability for widespread instability. He believed that to protect the monarchy from media attacks and destructive revelations, they could not continue to remain silent in the old ways. This contrast created tremendous pressure on all parties involved. Across the ocean, resistance was understandable, for when symbols of power are shaken, the structure of personal influence crumbles with them. The history of monarchies has always been a process of purification for survival. William is playing a game of chess where he has already moved many steps ahead. This is a battle between one side that wants to preserve unity through affection and the other that wants to maintain dignity through discipline. Ultimately, time will tell, can an institution survive If it does not dare to let go of the parts that are no longer compatible, we are drawing closer to the point where the line between family unity and the survival of an institution becomes clearer than ever. King Charles, with the heart of a father, sees the cracks that need to be filled with kindness. He sees individuals' memories and hopes for reconciliation. But on the opposite side, Prince William sees a system error. In the successor's thinking, this is not a matter of emotion, but a model being exploited, eroding the foundations built over thousands of years of history. Construction workers. Construction. William isn't waiting for the future. He's shaping it right now. Behind the velvet curtains lies a strategic council, not a group of fleeting crisis management experts, but constitutional historians and masters of political science. They are the ones who understand the concept to its core. Authority. Their mission to draft a comprehensive framework to protect the monarchy from the upheavals of the new era. This wasn't an immediate response to a documentary or a memoir, but a complete overhaul of the British royal operating system. A new charter is gradually emerging with non-negotiable rules. William wants to eliminate the ambiguity that has existed for too long. He aims for a system where titles and privileges are not gifts of blood, but rewards of service. The line will be redrawn sharply. You cannot simultaneously possess the dignity of a national symbol and freely operate it as a personal brand in the commercial market. If you choose independence and glamorous contracts, that's your right, but you will no longer be part of the symbol machine. William's plan was revolutionary because it shifted power back to the incumbent monarch through clear legal mechanisms. The decision of who stayed and who left would not be based on anger or personal feelings, but on a single criterion: commitment. This has been done historically for individuals who damage the public goodwill, and now it's been standardized into an operating procedure. Once you step outside to pursue your own values, you'll have to shed the protective coat of royalty. This battle isn't just about titles on paper, but about redefining what it means to be a member of royalty in the 21st century. William is building a legal fortress to ensure that whoever comes and goes, the institution will remain. As the spotlight fades, what remains is not personal squabbles, but a purified system ready for the challenges of the future. In the philosophy of ancient dynasties, there is a harsh truth. When you step through the gates to seek personal freedom, the glory of the institution will not follow you. Remember, in the philosophy of thousand-year dynasties, once you choose to step outside in search of freedom, the halo of heritage will never follow you. Facing these cold yet visionary maneuvers, how do you feel about Prince William's actions? If you support this decisiveness and believe it is a vital step to protect the legacy, leave a number 2 in the comments. If you feel these rules are too harsh and lack compassion for family, leave a number 5. We look forward to seeing your choice in the comments below. Prince William's entire vision is encapsulated in one powerful idea. If a symbol belonged to everyone, it would lose its meaning to everyone. The power of a dynasty lies in its uniqueness. Once its noble title is juxtaposed with consumer goods or social media posts, its sacred value vanishes. A constitutional legacy turned into an entertainment accessory. William did not act out of anger or personal vendetta. He is acting as a strategist, looking 50, 100, or even 200 years into the future. The question he is asking is not how to please all family members, but rather, what does this institution need to survive in the future? His answer was the limitations. The boundaries were clear, strictly enforced, and non-negotiable. To achieve this, a strategic brain was established drawing on models from Nordic monarchies such as Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands, places that successfully modernized by streamlining their bureaucracy and redefining the value of service. This is the biggest difference between the present and the past. While King Charles always sought a compromise, a balance between family ties and responsibility, William's approach was binary, in or out. According to him, this is not a family company where members can join or withdraw according to their personal lifestyles. It is an institution with a supreme purpose. All participants must be fully committed or completely separate. There is no room for half-hearted solutions where people want to enjoy the privileges of the crown while simultaneously pursuing private commercial deals. In the face of attempts to maintain power through legal means or media, the new system William is building is creating a constitutional fortress. When rules are codified and based on the principle of service, any individual resistance becomes insignificant in the face of institutional weight. The truth is, the world may change, but the essence of monarchical authority always demands a sacrifice of the ego for the common good. We are witnessing the birth of a new era, an era where glory is not measured by media fame, but by unwavering adherence to core values. William is proving that to protect a crown, sometimes one must learn to say no decisively, because ultimately only what is truly pure can endure the test of time. There is a truth that the media often overlooks: glittering titles never belong to a specific individual. They are not inherited property or permanent possessions. In the structure of the British monarchy, every title is borrowed from the throne. When the connection to the source of power is shaken, those titles can return to where they originated. This is not a typical property dispute, but the reclamation of constitutional symbols. In the world of administrative procedures, there is a term that sounds dry but carries immense weight: letters patent, royal patent. Don't let the name fool you. This is essentially a supreme executive decree of the monarch. No noisy parliamentary votes, no complicated referendums. With just a carefully drafted document and the signature of the head of the monarchy, the entire power structure, the order of succession, and royal membership can be fundamentally altered. This is the most powerful tool, allowing the king to redefine his common home in an instant. To understand this power, we must go back in time to 1917. Amidst the upheavals of the era, King George V recognized a paradox: the proliferation of titles was diluting the value of the royal family. Distant relatives' branches, no longer contributing to the common good, were still holding these prestigious titles. With historical determination, he issued a decree to narrow the list of those called prince and princess. This was not personal animosity, but a campaign, refining symbols to protect the prestige of the Windsor family. History is witnessing a repetition of that mindset in the new era. Amidst speculation about legal battles or intentions of resistance, there is an invisible but solid barrier: royal privileges. Once a decree has been issued based on long-standing constitutional rules, any individual attempts at litigation are often rendered ineffective against the will of the monarchy. Disputes over names or membership are no longer matters of emotion, but of formal legal documents. A lack of understanding of these mechanisms sometimes leads to illusions of power that are unrealistically impossible to fulfill. Eventually, the media frenzy would die down, leaving only the archived documents in the National Archives. William and his strategic council understood power lay not in debate, but in wielding the pen that wrote the rules. Once the decree was signed, history would turn a new page, and those who failed to adapt to the new rules would become mere footnotes in the flow of time. In the world of long-established institutions, seismic changes rarely came from public debates or noisy elections. It comes from the stillness of the pen. A group of people might be considered representatives of a dynasty in the morning, but by afternoon that position may be a thing of the past. This is the privilege of supremacy. No approval needed, just a signed decision, and the course of history will change. Many sources suggest that a strategic update lies in the archives of Kensington Palace, awaiting its moment of realization. This draft carries a simple yet revolutionary message. Titles are associated with dedication. Only those who are truly present and serve the institution full-time are allowed to wear the official emblems. The rest will be returned to the warmth of their families, but no longer as representatives of the nation. This is a step aimed at protecting the rarity and value of the royal brand in the 21st century. Imagine the power of a title. For individuals who have built entire personal empires on a single word such as Duchess, stripping them of official recognition is a devastating blow. Identity reconstruction thoroughly. When institutional backing disappears, that title is no longer a magic key to unlocking doors of power or multi-million-dollar contracts. It becomes a ceremonial title lacking the weight of legitimacy. In the world of high-level partnerships, the difference between official representative and related party is a chasm of value. Every speech, every production project, or every international event we see largely revolves around royal appearances. But what happens when the energy supplying that aura is cut off? When an individual abandons their status to seek independence, they inadvertently put themselves to a harsh market test. Is personal value great enough to survive without the shadow of the crown? William understood this better than anyone. He didn't need to fight. He simply needed to clarify the boundaries. Look at what has been built. From audio programs called archetypes to literary works signed with a prestigious title. In the world of influence, every speech, every appearance, and every branding deal is anchored to a single pillar of support. Title. It's not just a name, it's a master key that unlocks doors that an ordinary celebrity could hardly reach. But what happens if that support suddenly disappears? Imagine a new reality when the signboards at international events only display a personal name without the backing of a crown. The entertainment world is inherently pragmatic in its calculations of value. They don't just pay for fame, they pay for value, exclusive and legitimate. Without those sacred words, would the allure remain intact? Fame may be brilliant, but it is often fleeting, while an institution thousands of years old possesses the power of permanence. When the radiance is cut off from its roots, the foundation of an entire personal empire will begin to show cracks in its values. Prince William did not act in ambiguity. He had deeply studied how neighboring dynasties adapted to the times. One particular case caught his attention: Queen Margrethe II's decisiveness in Denmark. With a single statement, She streamlined the monarchy by revoking the titles of her own nephews. Her reasoning was clear. The monarchy needed clarity of roles, not the chaos of symbols without accountability. William observed how the world reacted, how public opinion stabilized, and how the Danish monarchy became lean and stable. It's definitely better after that surgery. The confidence of the British heir to the throne stems from understanding that preserving a great heritage sometimes requires making difficult decisions. Restructuring doesn't necessarily have to be a dramatic face-to-face confrontation. It can unfold quietly through official channels, yet its impact can be transformative. When the rules of legitimacy are enforced, the line between a person of royal lineage and one media star, it will become unmistakable. History has proven that the longest-lasting institutions are not the most rigid, but those that adapt before being forced to. Prince William learned a valuable lesson from the northern dynasties. Decisiveness doesn't need to be accompanied by noise. In Denmark, a symbolic transfer of power took place quietly, decisively, and without compromise. The goal wasn't to please everyone, but to protect the centralization and transparency of the royal family.